Independence Day Resurgence is a pretty late sequel, coming a full 20 years after the original, and also taking place 20 years later. If you're like me, you might have wondered why one of the most iconic and successful movies of the 90s would take so long to get a sequel. But after seeing Resurgence, I can tell you that this was perhaps wise. If this film came out in 2001, it might have been dismissed as a carbon copy of the original with some escalation and a quick cash grab. But 20 years is not quick at all, and now with the old cast having aged 20 years and Will Smith having declined to be a part of the sequel, rather than being seen as a carbon copy, it will perhaps be seen as a legacy sequel, the next generation of Independence Day, so to speak. The film opens 20 years later, and after having destroyed the mothership and either killed or imprisoned every remaining harvester, and melded their technology with our own to create a rather impressive defense force, despite 20 years of world peace, insane leaps in technological advancement, and a state of hair-trigger vigilance for any form of extraterrestrial threats, Earth is once again ill-prepared for the return of the harvesters, who this time, instead of ominously hovering above Earth for a day before using a coordinated strike, land a mothership directly on Earth and start drilling into our core to destroy the planet. The short time frame the characters have to deal with this threat leads to a rather fast-paced movie, but it still takes the time to give us the typical character moments that will seem awfully familiar to both fans and haters of the original. I'll just lay it out for you guys right now. The original Independence Day was initially reviewed extremely well, one of the best reviewed films of 1996 at the time, but it later suffered backlash when people started nitpicking it to death. And I feel that in the age of Rotten Tomatoes, CinemaSins, and 140 character reviews on Twitter, Resurgence will get the backlash sooner rather than later, but what you came here to know is this a good film or not? Well, I can tell you that it really depends on what you thought of the polarizing original. If you felt that the original film was an embarrassingly jingoistic slog rife with plot holes and emotional manipulation, then yes, Resurgence is that. If you felt that the original was a dumb but fun 90s classic that is high on entertainment, and that the haters took it too seriously, then you're going to have that same reaction to Resurgence. At no point do they try to change any of the themes from the first film, though they do expand on them. The new characters meld into the world mostly because they're, for the most part, related to the old ones. President Whitmore's daughter, who is just like her father, Captain Hiller's son, Russell Cass's son, David Levinson's ex-girlfriend. We get to know these characters as being the next generation, though the movie still focuses greatly on the old cast, particularly Brent Spiner as Dr. Oakham, who I assumed died in the first film, but it turns out he was merely comatose, and he awakens when the aliens return due to his previous link with them. We also get some other new characters that are mostly archetypes, the African warlord, the nerdy researcher, the hot Asian fighter pilot, and while they don't exactly emblazon the screenplay with amazing lines, their presence is at least not unwelcome. I was a fan of the original Independence Day, and I'm a fan of this one. I prefer the original, but this movie expands on it in a way that, yes, could only have happened 2 decades later, and while the ending will seem to have twice the urgency of the original but only about half the punch, Resurgence is a worthy sequel that was worth waiting for, but with the caveat that if you hated the first one, this will do nothing to change your mind and should be skipped altogether. For me, it's an 8 out of 10. If you're a fan of Independence Day that was worried that it might be a disappointment, worry not.